The first thing I heard after I hit the floor was my mother's voice. Not screaming. Not calling 911. Scoffing. This is what happens when she refuses to listen. I tried to lift my head, but the service hallway tilted sideways. The old plaster walls seemed to lean over me, then pull away again. Somewhere beyond the closed ballroom doors, a violinist was warming up for the rehearsal dinner. The notes came through the wall, soft and elegant, absurdly normal against the pounding in my skull. My father stepped into view. For one stupid second, relief moved through me. Dad would call someone. Dad would at least kneel down. Instead, he looked at me the way he looked at a leaking pipe 30 minutes before guests arrived. An inconvenience. She did this to herself, he said. Let her deal with it. I opened my mouth. Dad. Barely a sound came out. Mom folded her arms. I told you not to come barging into places you don't belong. That sentence cut through the fog better than anything else. Because she had told me to come, my phone was still somewhere near my right hand. I could see the pale glow of the screen against the dark floorboards. Her message was probably still open. Come by at 4:30 before rehearsal. We need to talk about your latest email. Use the side entrance. I had done exactly that. I tried to reach for the phone. My fingers moved maybe 2 inches. Mom noticed. Her eyes dropped to my hand, then to the phone. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then music swelled behind the ballroom doors, followed by a burst of laughter. Dad checked his watch. We've got people arriving. Mom looked toward the sound. That was the moment I understood what was happening. They were leaving. Not because they thought I was fine. Not because someone else had already called for help. They were leaving because Bennett House had guests coming, and guests had always ranked higher than family problems, as long as those problems could be hidden behind a closed door. Mom. This time, my voice came out. Weak, but clear enough. Call someone. She looked down at me. There was irritation in her face. Yes. But there was something else too. Calculation. You're conscious, she said. Stop being dramatic. Then she turned away. Dad followed her. The ballroom door opened just long enough for warm light and music to spill across the hallway. Then it shut. I was alone. I stared at the staircase beside me. One end of a strip of yellow repair tape hung loose from the railing, curling slowly in the draft. That detail mattered later. At the time, all I could think was that someone had known there was a problem. My mother had asked me to come through the side entrance. The side entrance led directly to that service staircase. And now I was lying underneath it while my parents told themselves I had created my own emergency. I wish I could say I felt rage. I didn't. Not yet. I felt embarrassed. That is the part people who grow up in families like mine understand without explanation. Even lying on the floor, struggling to keep my eyes open, a small part of me wondered if I really had made too much of things. Maybe I should not have come. Maybe I should have waited until after the rehearsal. Maybe I should not have sent that email. Maybe. Footsteps pounded down the corridor. Claire? A woman's voice. Not Mom. Lena Ortiz appeared above me, her face draining of color. Oh my God. Lena had managed operations at Bennett House for almost 4 years. She was competent, quiet, and very good at making disasters disappear before brides noticed them. She dropped to her knees beside me. What happened? I tried to answer, but the hallway rolled again. Don't move. She pulled out her phone. I heard 3 numbers being pressed. For some reason, that sound made tears burn behind my eyes. Not the pain. Not my parents walking away. Someone else calling 911. Lena gave the dispatcher the address. Historic Bennett House, service entrance. Adult woman. Possible head injury. Conscious but confused. Then she looked at me. How long have you been here? I didn't know. 5 minutes? 15? The clock on the wall was doubled in my vision. My mother. What? She asked me to come. Lena went very still. My mother asked me to come. Her mouth tightened. She looked toward the ballroom. I had known Lena long enough to recognize the expression. She knew something did not fit, but she did not tell me what. She returned her attention to the dispatcher. Yes, she's talking. A few minutes later, paramedics filled the hallway. Questions came quickly. My name. My age. Whether I knew where I was. Whether I had lost consciousness. Whether I took blood thinners. I answered what I could. One of them asked whether someone had seen me fall. I don't know. Did anyone find you immediately afterward? I looked toward the ballroom door. My parents were here. That was the last thing I remembered clearly. When I woke again, the ceiling was white. Not Bennett House white. Hospital white. Flat fluorescent panels. A monitor beeped somewhere to my left. My mouth felt coated in dust. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Easy. A nurse appeared beside me. You're at Cape Fear Medical Center. I closed my eyes. How long? A little over a day since you came in. A day. The number would not settle in my head. Phone. Phone. We have your belongings. My parents? The nurse hesitated just enough for me to notice. Someone from law enforcement is waiting to speak with you when you're ready. That woke me faster than anything else could have. Why? I'll let her explain. Here. A few minutes later, a woman in a navy blazer entered carrying a small notebook. She introduced herself as Detective Mara Cole. She did not look dramatic. No television detective stare. No theatrical concern. She pulled a chair closer to the bed. Miss Bennett, I know you've just regained consciousness. If you need to stop at any point, tell me. What happened? You were found at your family's event venue and transported here. I know that part. Her eyes stayed on mine. Your parents gave statements about the incident. Something cold moved through my stomach. What did they say? I'd rather hear your account first. Professional. Careful. I recognized the technique because compliance interviews worked much the same way. Do not contaminate someone's recollection. Do not feed them the answer you expect. I took a breath. My mother asked me to come to Bennett House before the rehearsal. Why? She said we needed to discuss an email I sent. What email? I'll show you. Continue. I used the side entrance because she specifically told me to. I was going upstairs to the small office over the service corridor. Why upstairs? That's where she handles paperwork when there's an event. I stopped. A flicker of memory. My hand on the railing. A shift beneath my palm. The sickening half-second when my weight went somewhere the railing did not. I grabbed the rail. Cole waited. It moved. How much? I don't know. Enough. I swallowed. I fell. Do you remember what happened immediately afterward? My fingers tightened around the blanket. My parents came. Both of them. Yes. What did they do? There it was. The question I did not want to answer. Because saying it out loud would make it real in a way memory still had not. My mother said I had done it to myself. Cole did not react. My father said to let me deal with it. Did either of them call emergency services? I thought they would. That wasn't my question. I looked at her. No. She wrote something down. Who called? I already knew the answer. But I needed to hear it anyway. Your operations manager. Lena Ortiz. I stared at the blanket. How long after they left? We're establishing that. The phrase was neutral. The implication was not. I breathed through the pressure building behind my ribs. What did my parents tell you? Cole closed her notebook halfway. They said you arrived without warning during a busy event period, entered a staff-restricted area after being told not to, and fell while upset. I laughed once. It hurt my head. Of course they did. Is that inaccurate? My mother told me to come. Can you verify that? Yes. That one word changed the room. Not because Detective Cole suddenly believed everything I said. Because I had something testable. Where is your phone? The nurse brought my belongings. My screen had a crack across one corner, but it turned on. There were dozens of messages. Family group chat. Missed calls. Texts from colleagues. 3 from Megan. I ignored all of them. I opened Mom's thread. The message was still there. Come by at 4:30 before rehearsal. We need to talk about your latest email. Use the side entrance. Timestamp. 3:52 p.m. I handed the phone to Cole. She read it without touching anything. Can you send a copy to the address I give you? Yes. I did. She made another note. For the first time, something in her expression shifted. Not belief. Interest. Miss Bennett, your mother told us she had not expected you. She lied. I can establish what the message says. Fair enough. I had spent my career telling people the same thing. Facts first. Conclusions later. Cole nodded toward the phrase, latest email. What was she referring to? I held the phone tighter. This was where the story stopped being about a staircase. It's complicated. Family complicated or business complicated? Both. She waited. I opened my work email. The search bar blurred for a second before settling. I typed, Bennett House, September 1. The email appeared. I had written it 6 months earlier, after one argument too many. I read the first paragraph aloud. Effective September 1st, I will no longer review, approve, supervise, or represent Bennett House in any risk or safety capacity. Cole looked at me. You were employed there? No. Consultant? Not officially. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. What were you? I almost said their daughter. Instead I said, free labor with a professional certification. That earned the smallest change in her face. Not amusement exactly. Recognition. I scrolled. I work in risk and compliance for a hotel group. When my parents opened Bennett House, I helped them build procedures. Vendor incidents. Emergency contacts. Documentation. Insurance questions. Stuff like that. For compensation, sometimes they bought dinner. Cole wrote something down. And 6 months ago you stopped. Yes. Why? Because I kept being treated like I was responsible for things I had no authority to control. I found Mom's reply. 4 words. Fine. We'll handle it. Cole read them. So your mother acknowledged the change? Yes. Did you do any work for Bennett House after September 1st? No. I paused. I answered 2 questions from Lena because they were about forms I had originally created. But I didn't review operations. I didn't approve repairs. I didn't represent them to anyone. Insurance? No. Lenders? I looked at her. Why are you asking about lenders? I'm asking generally. That was probably true. But the word lodged in my mind. Lenders. Bennett House had no reason to be dealing with a new lender that I knew of. Cole closed her notebook. 1 more question. Okay. Do you still work for Bennett House? There was something almost absurd about it. All those years of weekends, answering calls, reading contracts over Sunday dinner, correcting staff forms, explaining insurance requirements, while my mother called me paranoid. And officially? Nothing. I never worked for them, I said quietly. Not officially. Cole studied me for a moment. Then she stood. I may need to speak with you again. Detective. She stopped. Did you go back to my parents after the hospital told you I woke up? Her expression stayed carefully neutral. We spoke with them again this morning. I pictured my parents at home. A knock at the door. Detective standing outside. Mom learning that the daughter she had already explained away was awake. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt tired. What did they say? That's part of an active inquiry. Of course. She gave me her card. If you remember anything else about the fall, the railing, or what happened afterward, call me. I looked down at the card. Are they in trouble? That depends on facts we haven't established yet. That answer stayed with me after she left, because it was the exact opposite of how my family worked. In my family, conclusions came first. Facts were arranged afterward. Megan called 20 minutes later. I almost declined. Then I remembered she had called 3 times while I was unconscious. I answered. Claire? Her voice broke on my name. Oh my God. I said nothing. I've been trying to get through. They wouldn't let us see you. And then the police, Claire. Are you okay? I woke up. I know. How? Dad called me. Of course he had. Megan started crying. Real crying, I thought. Not performance. I thought you were gone. The words hit harder than I expected. Apparently, somewhere between the ambulance and my waking up, the family had decided I might die. Or told people I already had. Who told you that? Mum said the doctors weren't optimistic. That's not what I asked. Silence. Mom told you I was gone. She said it looked really bad. Megan. I don't know exactly what she said. I closed my eyes. For 30 years, Megan had been allowed not to know exactly. That was one of the luxuries of being protected. Other people handled details. Other people cleaned up consequences. What did Mom tell you happened? Another pause. That you came over angry. Wrong. And you went through the service hall even though she told you not to. Wrong. She said you were upset about the business. Megan, she texted me, and told me to come. I didn't know that. I showed the detective. The silence changed. Not surprised this time. Fear. You showed the police her messages? She lied to them. I'm not saying she should have. That sentence usually ends badly. Claire, please. I could hear her breathing. Then she said the thing that told me exactly where we were. We have 8 weddings in the next 3 weeks. I stared at the hospital window. There it was. Concern. Love. Fear. And Bennett House sitting in the middle of all 3. What does that have to do with me lying on a hospital bed? It could shut everything down. I didn't shut anything down. I know, but people are already asking questions. Good. That's not fair. I laughed again, softer this time. Fair. Megan continued quickly. Mom and Dad are panicking. Lena is barely talking to anyone. Vendors heard police were there. If there's some investigation. There is an investigation because they left me there. I don't know what happened. I just told you. I wasn't there. The golden child defense. I wasn't there. I didn't know. Mom handled it. Dad thought. Someone else always stood between Megan and responsibility. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Why did Mom ask me there? I thought it was about the risk paperwork. I froze. What risk paperwork? I don't know. Insurance or something. Megan. What? I stopped doing risk work for Bennett House 6 months ago. I know you were mad. No. I resigned. Well, what? I thought you were still helping Mom with some things. My hand slowly lowered. Why? Because she said you were. The room became very quiet. Megan, what exactly did she say? I don't know exactly. There it was again. But you thought I was still involved. Yes. With what? Compliance stuff. Insurance. Safety. Have you seen my name on anything? A longer silence. Megan, there are some old slides. What slides? For the expansion. I sat straighter despite the pain. What expansion? Claire. What expansion? She exhaled. We've been looking at another property. My heart rate monitor ticked faster. Since when? Months. And my name is on the presentation? It's not like that. Those 4 words had introduced nearly every bad thing my family had ever asked me to tolerate. Then tell me what it's like. It just says Bennett House has family-led compliance systems, and that you helped develop them. Help develop is past tense. I think there's a bio too. A current bio? I don't know. Does it say I'm involved now? I said I don't know. Her voice sharpened. For one moment, she sounded exactly like Mom. Then she softened again. Claire, can we not do this right now? You just woke up. She was right about one thing. I had just woken up. Maybe that was why I finally heard the absurdity. My entire family had spent years telling me I took things too seriously. But when their insurance, paperwork, vendors, or expansion needed credibility, apparently my seriousness became useful again. I need to rest, I said. Will you call Mom? No. She's a mess. So am I. She thinks you hate her. I asked her to call an ambulance. Megan went silent. I let the sentence sit between us. No explanation. No apology. No softening. That was new for me. I'll talk to you later, I said. Claire. I ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not because I felt powerful. Because every instinct I had was screaming at me to call back and fix what I had just done. Explain. Reassure. Tell Megan I loved her. Tell Mom I understood she had panicked. Tell Dad I did not want to hurt the business. That reflex had probably saved family dinners for years. It had also taught everyone that my boundaries came with an appeals process. I put the phone face down. Then I opened my laptop. I created a new folder. Bennett House Current Representations. The title looked cold, professional, almost ridiculous for a family matter. But that was the point. My family had spent years making business personal whenever they needed me to work for free, then making it just business whenever I asked for respect. I was done mixing the categories for them. Into the folder went Mom's text telling me to come at 4:30. Then my September resignation email. Then her response. Fine. We'll handle it. I stared at those words for a long time. At the time, they had hurt because they sounded dismissive. Now they meant something else. She had received the boundary. She had understood it. She had acknowledged it. Whatever happened after that could no longer be explained by saying she had not known. A notification appeared in the corner of my screen. New email. The sender was an automated Bennett House account I had forgotten still forwarded certain system notices to me. I almost deleted it. Then the subject line caught my eye. Annual Risk Renewal. Claire Bennett. Key Advisor Confirmation. I stopped breathing for a second. I opened it. My eyes went first to the date. 3 months after September 1st. 3 months after I had withdrawn from every risk and safety responsibility connected to Bennett House. 3 months after my mother had written, "Fine, we'll handle it." Yet there was my name. Not buried in an old attachment. Not mentioned as someone who had helped years ago. At the top. Current. Useful. Still theirs. I leaned back against the hospital pillow. Until that moment, I had believed my parents were lying about one afternoon. About why I had come. About where I had been told to go. About who was responsible for leaving me on that floor. But looking at that email, I understood the problem was older. And much bigger. My parents had not only been rewriting what happened after I fell. They had been using my name long before I hit the ground. I just didn't know yet what they had built with it. The email stayed open on my screen long after the nurse came in to check my blood pressure. Annual Risk Renewal, Claire Bennett, Key Advisor Confirmation. 3 months after I had resigned. 3 months after Mom had answered, "Fine, we'll handle it." Yet there was my name, sitting there as if September 1st had never happened. The nurse adjusted the cuff around my arm and glanced at the laptop. "You working already?" Trying not to. She gave me the kind of look nurses probably reserved for patients who lied badly. "You've got a concussion. The world can survive without you for a few days." Normally, that sentence would have made me smile. Instead, it landed somewhere uncomfortable. The world probably could. Bennett House had simply spent years making me believe it couldn't. After she left, the hospital room became quiet again. My fingers hovered over the renewal notice. Opening the attachment would have been easy. So, would forwarding it to Mom, with 3 question marks. That was the old reflex. Find the problem. Call home. Explain the problem. Fix the problem. Then wait for someone to tell me I worried too much. This time, I opened a blank document instead. At the top, I typed, "What do I know?" Not what did Mom mean. Not why would Dad do this. Not does Megan know. Facts. The same discipline I demanded at work whenever a hotel manager began an incident review with, "Here's what probably happened." The first line came easily. I ended all Bennett House risk and safety involvement, effective September 1st. Second, Deborah Bennett acknowledged that email. Third, my name appeared on a renewal notice 3 months later. Then I stopped. Anything beyond that would have been assumption. For once, assumption was not going to carry my mother's weight for her. My discharge came the next afternoon with instructions to rest, avoid driving for several days, and return if the headaches worsened. Megan offered to pick me up. I declined. A coworker from my actual job, Dana Brooks, drove me home instead. She did not ask for the whole story. She set a bag of groceries on my kitchen counter, placed my keys beside it, and said, "Text me if you need anything that does not involve logging into work." Very specific. You know your audience. After she left, the apartment felt almost too still. No wedding planners calling. No staff asking where to file incident forms. No father telling me a problem would only take 5 minutes. Just my couch, my laptop, and a navy lanyard sitting half out of the bag the hospital had returned to me. I pulled it free. The plastic badge had been printed years earlier, when Bennett House first started holding large weddings. Claire family. No title. Of course not. The first time Mom handed it to me, I had laughed. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Whatever comes up," she had said. That had sounded affectionate then. Now it looked like a job description. The memory came back with the smell of old wood and floor polish. Bennett House had only been open 6 months when Mom called me one Saturday morning because a caterer had slipped near the kitchen entrance and threatened to bill them for a damaged cart. "Can you just look at our paperwork?" she had asked. Just. That word had financed half my unpaid career with them. A few forms became an incident template. The template became an emergency contact sheet. That became a vendor checklist. then insurance questions, then staff procedures. Dad used to joke that I could find liability in a birthday cake. Megan called me the Department of Doom. Everybody laughed. Until something went wrong. Then my phone rang. Years later, during a venue tour, I heard Megan tell a bride, "We have professional risk systems built into everything we do." She was not lying. I had built them. She just never mentioned who "we" meant. At first, that did not bother me as much as it should have. Being useful felt close enough to being valued that I had spent years refusing to inspect the difference. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. "Mom." I watched it ring until it stopped. A text arrived immediately after. "We need to talk before this gets any more out of hand." My thumb rested above the screen. A response formed automatically. "I don't want this to get worse either." I deleted it. Then typed, "Please put anything related to Bennett House in writing." 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Finally, "I am your mother, Claire. I am not corresponding with my daughter like an attorney." A laugh escaped me, small and humorless. The funny part was that nobody in my family had minded treating me like a professional when they needed one. Only when I asked for the clarity professionals required. I put the phone down. That was my first real boundary after the hospital. It felt terrible, which was how I knew it was probably one I had needed years ago. By evening, the headache had eased enough for me to work for 20 minutes at a time. The renewal notice contained the name of the insurer's risk contact, Sarah Kim. We had exchanged emails before, back when I still helped Bennett House. Instead of calling, I wrote carefully, "Sarah, I received an automated notice referencing me as a current key advisor for Bennett House. I have had no risk, safety, compliance, or advisory role with Bennett House since September 1st. Would you please send me the current materials identifying my role so I can determine what information needs correction?" I read it 3 times. No accusations. No mention of Mom. No threats. Then I sent it. The answer came the next morning. "Claire, I was not aware your role had ended. I'm attaching the current renewal packet sections that reference you. Please review and advise what is inaccurate." My stomach tightened before the attachment finished downloading. Page after page appeared. Most of it was ordinary venue information. Occupancy, catering arrangements, security vendor, fire inspection dates. Then I found my name. Not once. Several times. A short professional bio I had written nearly 2 years earlier. A risk framework I had created when Bennett House added outdoor events. An old organizational chart. And beneath a section labeled Operational Oversight, Family Risk Advisor, Claire Bennett, Regional Risk and Compliance Manager. No signature had been forged. No fake certification had been created. That almost made it worse. Everything on the page had been true once. Someone had simply frozen the truth at the moment when it was most useful. The cover email was attached at the end. Sender, Deborah Bennett. Date, 4 months after my resignation. My mother had sent it herself. For several seconds, all I could hear was my refrigerator humming. A lie did not always require invented facts. Sometimes all it needed was an expiration date nobody mentioned. I saved the packet into my folder without altering the file name. Then I added a copy of Sarah's email. The temptation to call Mom came back so hard my hand actually moved toward the phone. This time, the question was not emotional. It was simple. Why? But calling her would give her something before I had it myself. A chance to explain. A chance to rename. A chance to tell me that advisor did not mean advisor. That old paperwork did not count. That everyone knew I was only helping casually. My entire childhood had been an education in how quickly facts could become interpretations once Mom started talking. So I did something harder. Nothing. At least, nothing she could see. The next message went to Lena. "Do you remember when the service stair rail was first reported as loose?" Her reply did not come for nearly an hour. "Yes." I waited. Then, "Do you know approximately when?" Another pause. "About 7 weeks before your fall." Contractor noted it during a walkthrough. My throat tightened. "Do you have the report?" This time Lena called. I let it ring once before answering. Her voice came low and guarded. "Claire, I can't send internal maintenance files to you. I'm not asking you to do something you shouldn't. Your text sounded like you were." "That's fair." A breath moved through the phone. I just need to understand what I remember, I said. Was the railing reported before I fell? Yes. Was it repaired? Not fully. My fingers tightened around a pen. What does that mean? They tightened it temporarily. The contractor recommended replacing the mounting hardware and closing that section for the work. Who handled the schedule? Lena hesitated. Your mom. The pen stopped. Did you ever hear anyone say why it wasn't done? I heard your dad say they couldn't tear up the back corridor during the busiest stretch of wedding season. Memory flashed. Dad standing at the kitchen island 3 or 4 weeks earlier, complaining about contractors. Everybody wants to shut something down. If we listened to every warning, we'd never host an event. At the time, I had assumed he was talking generally. Now I wrote the sentence down beneath Lena's name, then immediately crossed it out. I had heard the comment. I did not know what repair he had meant. Different thing, different standard. That distinction mattered. Lena, I said, if the police or insurer asks you directly about the repair, will you tell them what you told me? Yes. No dramatic promise. No declaration that she was finally taking my side. Just yes. That was enough. Before we hung up, she said, Claire? Yeah? I should have checked that hallway sooner. You called 911 when you found me. I still should have. Lena. She stopped. Don't rewrite your part because my parents rewrote theirs. The sentence surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise her. For years, I had volunteered to carry everyone's guilt. Apparently, I was getting tired. Later that afternoon, Megan appeared at my door carrying soup from a restaurant I liked and a white orchid that looked expensive enough to make me suspicious. You didn't answer my text. I was sleeping. That was only partly true. She stepped inside when I moved aside. Her eyes went immediately to the faint bruising near my hairline. Then, away. You look better. High praise. Claire. I'm kidding. No, you're doing that thing. What thing? Acting like everything's fine when you're furious. The accusation was almost funny coming from her. I took the soup and put it on the counter. Everything isn't fine. I know. Do you? She flinched. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then Megan sat at my kitchen table and pulled out her tablet. I brought something. What? The expansion deck. My body went still. She unlocked the screen. I thought maybe if you saw it, you'd understand that nobody was trying to steal your identity or anything insane. I never said they were. You're talking to police and insurance people. Those are two very different things. I know. She clearly did not. The presentation opened on a photograph of a sprawling brick property surrounded by live oaks. Bennett House Sick, a new generation of Southern events. Megan's name appeared beneath the title. Creative Director. I scrolled. Market analysis. Projected bookings. Renovation concept. Brand expansion. Then the slide I had already half expected. Operational strengths. Beneath it. Established family-led risk controls developed with Claire Bennett, Regional Risk and Compliance Manager. My current corporate title. My current employer was not named, but the implication was obvious. I looked up. Who wrote this slide? Mom's team put the deck together. Who was Mom's team? Her, Dad, the broker, me sometimes. Did you write this? No. Did you see it? Yes. Did you ask whether I agreed to have my name in it? Her face tightened. I assumed Mom had cleared it. With me? Yes. Why? Because she said you were still helping with some of the risk side. There it was again. Same answer. Same source. Mom, did she say I had agreed to this expansion? No. Did she say I was advising on it? Megan looked at the tablet. Not exactly. That's not an answer. She said the systems were yours and you'd still be available if something came up. A strange calm settled over me. Available. That was the word. Not employed. Not contracted. Not authorized. Available. As though my entire career existed in a glass case marked break in case of family emergency. How long have you been working on this property? About 6 months. The timing landed immediately. Since September. Megan's eyes lifted. Roughly. My resignation month. Did this start before or after I sent Mom that email? I don't know. Think. Claire, I wasn't tracking your emails. No. You were tracking a multi-million-dollar expansion. She leaned back. Why are you talking to me like I'm under investigation? Because every time I ask a specific question, everybody tells me not to make things so serious. They are serious now. They were serious when my name went on that deck. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, the younger sister disappeared, and I saw the woman who had spent years walking into rooms prepared by other people. She was not stupid. That mattered. If Megan had been clueless, this would have been easier. Instead, she was smart enough to know why my credentials looked good on that slide. Smart enough to understand what they suggested. Maybe not smart enough to have asked what it cost me. Are you trying to shut this down? She asked. I'm trying to find out what you're asking me to be responsible for. I'm not asking you to be responsible. Then take my name off. Her fingers curled around the edge of the tablet. That's not my decision. Whose is it? She did not answer. That answer was loud enough. Before leaving, Megan packed the tablet away, without showing me the rest. At the door, she turned. Mom said you're refusing to talk to her. I asked her to write. She thinks that's hostile. I think leaving me on a floor was hostile. Megan's face changed. Claire, I wasn't there. I know. That no longer absolved as much as it used to. After the door closed, I stood in my entryway for a long time. The soup was getting cold on the counter. The orchid looked ridiculous beside my stack of hospital paperwork. My phone buzzed. Not Mom. Not Megan. An unfamiliar email address. The signature read, Alicia Monroe, Risk Analyst, Coastal Heritage Lending. The first sentence made me sit down. Miss Bennett, we are completing key person verification for the Bennett House 2 financing package and need to confirm your continuing advisory relationship with the business. Financing package. Not marketing. Not an internal presentation. A lender. My name was not just decorating Megan's dream. Someone outside the family had been asked to rely on it. The message continued. Please confirm whether you remain involved in risk oversight and whether your responsibilities have materially changed during the current reporting period. Every instinct trained into me since childhood said the same thing. Call Mom first. Give her a chance. Do not embarrass her. Do not damage Megan. Do not make a family problem public. My cursor hovered over forward. Mom's email address auto-filled. I stared at it, then deleted it. Alicia had asked me a factual question. For once, I was going to give a factual answer before asking permission from the people who benefited from my silence. Miss Monroe, I have had no advisory, risk, safety, or compliance role with Bennett House since September 1st. I have not reviewed Bennett House 2. Please send me the specific representation you are asking me to verify, so I can accurately address any reference to my involvement. My hand paused over send. If the financing depended on me, this could hurt them. That thought was real. So was the one that followed. If financing depended on me, I deserved to know before my name was used to obtain it. I clicked send. The reply arrived 23 minutes later. Only 3 short paragraphs. The last one changed the shape of the entire problem. Thank you for clarifying. The September 1st date does not match the management certification currently in our file. Below that, I will send you the relevant section for review. I read the sentence again. Then once more. The insurer had outdated information. Megan had a presentation. Those could still be explained away as sloppy reuse. A management certification was different. Someone had not merely forgotten to remove my name. Someone had told the lender that the situation had not changed. And whoever had done it had apparently done so after my mother told me, in writing, Fine, we'll handle it. Alicia's email arrived the next morning at 8:17. By then, I had already read her last message enough times to know every word. The September 1st date does not match the management certification currently in our file. The new email contained one attachment and a short note. I'm sending only the section relevant to the representation concerning your role. Please let me know if anything attributed to you is inaccurate. My coffee sat untouched beside the laptop. The attachment was only 4 pages. The sentence that mattered was halfway down page 3. There have been no material changes to key operational and risk personnel since the prior reporting period. Below it was a certification. Not mine. Mom's. Deborah Bennett, Managing Member. The date was nearly 3 months after my resignation. For several seconds, the words lost meaning. My eyes kept moving from the certification date to September 1st, then back again. This was not an old brochure someone had forgotten to update. Not a slide Megan assumed had been cleared. Not an automated form dragging stale information forward. Mom had signed something after receiving my resignation. She had told the lender there had been no meaningful change in the very area I had formally left. The first emotion that came was not anger. It was embarrassment. A ridiculous, deep embarrassment that I had spent days wondering whether she had simply misunderstood me. Whether my email had sounded too emotional. Whether fine, "We'll handle it" meant she had read the words but not grasped what they required. There was nothing ambiguous about the certification in front of me. Mom knew the role mattered when someone outside Bennett House wanted reassurance. She only treated it as informal when I wanted authority over what my name supported. My phone buzzed. "Alicia, did you receive it?" she asked when I answered. "Yes. Does anything there reflect a relationship you actually had at the time?" "No." The word came faster now. I had already ended every advisory role by then. "Were you performing any ongoing reviews?" "No." "Participating in management meetings?" "No." "Approving risk procedures?" "No." "Were you being paid or contracted in any advisory capacity?" "No." Alicia paused. "I want to be precise here. The certification does not name you in that sentence. Your name appears elsewhere in the file, as part of the risk structure. I'm not asking you to interpret why it was signed. I understand. That distinction mattered. At work, I hated when people stretched a document beyond what it proved. Mom's signature did not tell me what she had been thinking. It told me what she had represented. That was enough. "What happens now?" I asked. "We clarify the current structure." "Does this mean the financing is dead?" "No." Relief came first. Then something less comfortable. Part of me had wanted a clean consequence so I would not have to decide anything. Alicia continued. "We need an accurate picture before we can determine whether the change affects underwriting. What do you need from me?" "For now, confirmation of your status and the effective date." "Nothing else?" "Nothing else from you." After we hung up, the apartment was quiet except for the ceiling fan. No one had asked me to accuse Mom. No one needed a speech about years of being used. The only question was what my role had actually been. For once, the simplest answer was also the strongest. I opened the folder I had started in the hospital. Then, I made a second document. At the top, I typed 5 dates. September 1st, the day my resignation became effective. January, when Lena said the contractor had flagged the loose railing. February, when the insurance renewal still identified me as a current advisor. March, when Mom signed the lender certification stating there had been no material change in key operational and risk personnel. Then the afternoon I fell, when my parents told investigators I no longer had an operational role and had shown up on my own. 5 dates. 5 claims. No theory. No accusation. Just chronology. Next to the final line, I typed, "These statements cannot all be accurate." That sentence did more for me than every argument I had ever had with Mom. Arguments were where she was strongest. Dates were not. Before I could decide what to do with the page, Megan texted, "Can we talk? In person this time." My first instinct was no. Then I looked at the expansion deck screenshot I had saved. If she knew more, I needed to hear it without filling the blanks myself. "Coffee shop near my apartment. 1 hour." Her reply came almost immediately. "Okay." Megan arrived wearing jeans, no makeup, hair pulled into a loose knot. She looked younger like that. For a moment, I remembered teaching her to drive in an empty high school parking lot while she laughed every time she stalled my car. Then she put her phone on the table between us, and the memory went away. "I want to show you the whole deck," she said. "Why now?" "Because I don't want you thinking I put your name in there. That's not the same as telling me what you did know." Her fingers tightened around the paper coffee cup. "I know. That was new." She opened the presentation and turned the phone toward me. We went slide by slide. Megan had designed most of the branding. Color palette. Client positioning. Wedding packages. Renderings. Her fingerprints were all over the creative side. When we reached the operational section, the formatting changed slightly. Different font weight. Different spacing. Not proof of anything by itself, but enough to match what Megan had already said. Who made these slides? Mom sent them to me. Did you change them? Not the wording. Did you read them? Yes. My eyes stayed on hers. So you saw my name? Yes. Before the hospital. Yes. There it was. Not the answer I wanted. The answer I needed. Why didn't you ask me? She looked down. Mom said you were still helping. You told me that already. I believed her. Did you believe I had agreed to be used in lender materials? I didn't know they were lender materials. That gave me pause. What did you think the deck was for? Investors, brokers, the seller, maybe the bank. I didn't know exactly who got which version. That should have made you ask more questions, not fewer. I know that now. Her voice sharpened on the last word. Then she took a breath. I thought the operational stuff was Mom and Dad's side. Mine was branding and clients. The familiar structure appeared again. Megan got to be responsible for the parts that made her visible. Other people handled the parts that made visibility possible. Did Mom ever say I had approved Bennett House too? No. Did she say I was reviewing it? Not in those words. What words? Megan stared into her coffee. She said your systems were already in place, and you'd be there if something serious came up. A bitter laugh escaped me. What did you think that meant? That you were still available. The word from the previous conversation. Available. Not employed. Not consulted. Not asked. Available. Like a fire extinguisher bolted to the wall. So no, Megan said quickly. I didn't create this. I didn't sign anything. I didn't tell a lender you worked there. Some of the suspicion I had carried toward her loosened. Not all of it. Okay. She blinked. That's it? That answers one question. You thought I was behind it. I thought you might be. Her face tightened. That hurts. I know. For once, I did not apologize for following evidence. Megan wrapped both hands around her cup. What are you going to do? Correct the record. Fear appeared immediately in her expression. Not guilt. Not outrage. Fear. Right now? Yes. Claire, the closing is close. How close? She hesitated. Mom says a few weeks. My back went straighter. So you knew. I knew we were getting close. I didn't know your role was a problem. You know now. Yes. Then why are you asking me to wait? Her eyes filled but did not spill over. Because if you correct it before closing, they may reopen the whole file. They should if the file is wrong. It's one piece of the application. One piece using my name. But nothing bad happened because of that. I stared at her. The hospital band had left a faint adhesive mark on my wrist that I had not quite scrubbed away. Megan followed my gaze. That's not what I meant. Then say what you meant. She exhaled. I mean, the expansion isn't unsafe because your name is in a deck. This isn't about the deck anymore. I know. Do you? She leaned closer. Can't you wait until we close? Then they can hire whoever they want. Take your name off. Change everything. There it was. The moment that divided ignorance from choice. Before that sentence, Megan could say she had trusted Mom. After it, she knew the record was wrong. She simply wanted it to stay wrong a little longer. For how long? I asked. A few weeks. And during those weeks? Nothing changes. Exactly. Her face went still. I let the quiet stay. Megan had not designed the problem. She had not signed the certification. But now that the problem threatened something she wanted, she was asking me to absorb it. Same structure. Different person. When we left, she hugged herself, rather than me. At the curb, she said. You're going to ruin this, aren't you? No. She looked at me. I'm going to tell the truth about my role. What happens after that belongs to the people who built the deal. Her mouth tightened. That's easy for you to say. It wasn't. That was why I said it anyway. Dad called that evening from a number I did not recognize. I answered before realizing who it was. Claire. His voice carried the clipped patience he used whenever a contractor told him something would cost more than expected. Dad. We need to stop this from getting stupid. Define stupid. You contacting lenders directly. They contacted me. You know what I mean. No, I don't. A long breath came through the phone. Your mother reused an old structure. She should have updated it. Did you know I resigned in September? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. That hurt in a cleaner way than Mom's paperwork. No confusion. No misunderstanding. Dad knew. Did you know the lender still had me listed as part of the risk structure? Deborah handles the paperwork. That wasn't my question. I don't review every line she sends to a bank. Did you know? Another pause. Not the specifics. What about the railing? His tone changed. What about it? Lena says a contractor flagged it weeks before I fell. Lena needs to be very careful about what she's saying. My jaw tightened. Did you know the repair was delayed? There were repairs all over that building. This one, I don't remember. That was possible. It was also not an answer I could turn into evidence, so I did not try. Instead, I asked the question that had been sitting beneath everything else. How close is the purchase? Dad went quiet. Then, close enough that if you start correcting lender files right now, you could kill it. There it was. Not hidden anymore. You're asking me to leave inaccurate information in place. I'm asking you not to make a technical change sound like a scandal. My role ended 6 months ago, and the procedures you wrote stayed in place. The procedures and the person are not the same thing. To you. No, Dad. To anyone who thinks I'm still reviewing them. His voice hardened. You always do this. What? Turn everything into definitions. My laugh came before I could stop it. Definitions. Dates. Scope. Authority. All the boring things people hated until a problem required somebody to be responsible. I learned to, I said. He was quiet. Then softer, almost tired, he said. Your sister has put everything into this. There it was. Megan. The softest place to press. You think I don't know that? Then act like it. The old version of me would have asked what he wanted me to do. Instead, I said, if her future requires me to pretend I'm still part of Bennett House, then somebody should have told me before they built it that way. Dad ended the call first. The next morning, Alicia and I spoke again. Her voice remained measured. The current timeline matters, she said. The lender is reviewing whether the change in advisory support affects the risk assumptions used in the financing. How long will that take? I can't give you an exact date. Is there a closing deadline? Yes. How much room is there? Not much. That matched Dad's warning, without requiring me to trust him. What happens if I do nothing? I asked. We still have your email stating you have not been involved since September. So doing nothing doesn't preserve the old version anymore. No, that mattered. The truth was already in the room. There was no putting it back into my inbox and pretending I had not seen it. What do you need from me next? Nothing at this moment. The question is whether Bennett House intends to replace the advisory function, operate without it, or propose another structure. Another structure? Possibly. She did not elaborate. I did not push. That was not my decision to invent for them. By afternoon, Mom finally followed my written communication rule. An email arrived with the subject line, proposal. No guilt in the subject. No, call your mother. No, we need to fix this as a family. That alone made me nervous. The message was brief. Claire, since you have made clear that you will not continue informally, we are prepared to formalize your role for a limited transition period. You would be compensated, given defined authority to review operations, and publicly credited for the systems you developed. We would also cover your remaining medical costs related to the incident. After closing, we would transition the role to an outside professional, if that is what you still want. I read it once, then again. Everything I had asked for in pieces over the years was suddenly sitting in one paragraph. Pay, authority, credit, defined scope. Not because anyone had finally understood my feelings. Because the closing date was approaching. A second attachment followed 10 minutes later. A draft consulting agreement. 90 days. My pulse began to thud in my ears. The offer was not fake. That would have been easier. It was real enough to tempt me. If I accepted, Bennett House would have actual advisory support again. The lender could reassess a current structure instead of an outdated one. Repairs could be reviewed properly. Staff procedures could be checked. Megan's expansion might survive. My parents could say they had corrected the problem, and I would finally have the authority I had spent years saying I needed. For the first time since waking in the hospital, there was a path where everyone could get something. That was what frightened me, because I knew exactly what it would teach them. My September resignation had not meant no. It had meant no, until the consequences became expensive enough. I left the draft open and walked into the kitchen. The Navy lanyard still hung from the back of a chair. Claire family. I picked it up. No title. No authority. Only obligation. The strangest thing was that I had once worn it proudly. My phone rang. Mom. I did not answer. A minute later, Megan texted. Please consider it. This fixes what you said was wrong. Dad sent another message shortly afterward. 90 days. Then you're out if that's still what you want. If that was still what I wanted, as if the 6 months in September were evidence of uncertainty instead of consistency. Alicia called near the end of the day. I wanted you to hear this directly, she said. Bennett House has proposed a temporary formal advisory structure. I received their proposal. Understood. Does that solve the lender's concern? Not automatically. That answer loosened something in my chest. No magic. No title waved over bad paperwork to make it disappear. What would it require? I asked. A genuine current review, clearly defined authority, an effective date that reflects when your new role actually begins, and lender approval of the revised structure. So, nobody gets to pretend I never left. No. I sat down. What happens if I don't take it? The financing will be assessed without you. And if that weakens the deal? That would be part of the lender's decision, not mine. The distinction mattered. Alicia paused. There is one path that may keep the financing on schedule. The lender would need you to return formally and validate the current control environment. My gaze moved to the old lanyard in my hand. 90 days. A title. Money. Authority. Megan's future. Mom's business. Dad's closing date. Everything in the arrangement had changed except one assumption. When Bennett House needed Claire badly enough, Claire would come back. For most of my life, they had been right. This time, I had 24 hours to decide whether they still were. Alicia's last sentence stayed on the screen long after the call ended. There is one path that may keep the financing on schedule. The lender would need you to return formally and validate the current control environment. For several seconds, the apartment seemed to narrow around me. Not because I had discovered another lie, because someone had finally handed me the exact thing I had spent years pretending I wanted. Authority. A title. A reason for everyone at Bennett House to listen when I said something mattered. All I had to do was go back. My phone rang before I had finished processing that. Mom. I let it ring. A second call followed from Dad. Then Megan. 3 different names lighting the same screen. Nobody had called that way when my September email went out. Back then, one boundary had earned 4 words. Fine. We'll handle it. Now that the lender had noticed my absence, apparently everyone had discovered my number again. A message from Megan arrived first. Please just hear them out. Then Dad. We need 30 minutes. That's all. Mom waited the longest. Her message was different. I've put together a real proposal. You wanted this to be professional. Fine. Let's be professional. My eyes stayed on the word wanted, as though professionalism had been my strange personal preference instead of the minimum protection I had asked for after years of being held responsible without authority. Still, declining without looking would have been another kind of mistake. At work, I never rejected a corrective plan before reading it. The fact that this one came from my parents did not make facts less useful. So I replied to all 3 in one group message. Send the proposal before we meet. I'll review it. Any meeting will be by video. Mom answered within a minute. You can't even sit in a room with us now? No response went back. 10 minutes later, a PDF arrived. The document was surprisingly polished. A 90-day consulting agreement. A title. Director of Risk Advisory. Defined authority over operational review. Compensation that was higher than anything Bennett House had ever offered me. Reimbursement for the portion of my medical expenses not covered by insurance. Public acknowledgement that I had developed the venue's original risk framework. For a moment, anger gave way to something much more dangerous. Grief. They had known how to do this. That was the part I had not prepared for. Not the money. Not the title. The structure. Scope. Authority. Compensation. Someone had typed all the things I had asked for in one form or another over the years. Things that had always been dismissed as unnecessary because I was just helping. Apparently, none of them had been impossible. They had simply not become urgent until my refusal cost something. The video meeting was scheduled for the next morning. Mom appeared first, seated in the upstairs office at Bennett House. Dad joined from the same room a few seconds later. Megan connected from somewhere else in the venue. I recognized the pale green wall behind her from the bridal suite. Nobody smiled. Mom folded her hands on the desk. "You read it?" "Yes. And I have questions." Dad exhaled through his nose. "Of course you do." The old version of me would have reacted to the tone, defended the questions before asking them. Instead, the source matrix sat open beside my laptop. 5 dates. 5 claims. No emotion required. "When did you first tell the lender I was still involved with Bennett House?" Mom's mouth tightened. "That's not what the document says." "Then answer the question you think it asks." "We used the existing operational structure." "That isn't an answer." Dad leaned closer to the camera. "Claire, we've already acknowledged the paperwork should have been updated." "No, you've said it was old paperwork. Those are different things." Megan looked between them on her screen. Mom's voice became clipped. "The controls were still yours. The procedures were originally written by me. My role was not. You were always available when something came up." That sentence almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because there it was. The entire arrangement, reduced to 6 words. You were always available. My finger moved to the second line in the matrix. "Why did you certify there had been no material change in key operational or risk personnel after my September email?" Dad turned toward Mom. She did not look at him. "The framework did not materially change." "I didn't ask about the framework." "Claire, lenders use standard language. Did you sign it?" A beat passed. "Yes." "After you received my resignation?" Another beat. "Yes." Megan's face changed slightly. Nothing dramatic. Just her eyes dropping from the camera. Mom continued before I could. "That doesn't mean what you're trying to make it mean." "What am I trying to make it mean?" "You're acting like I fabricated an employee." "I'm not acting like anything." The page beside me no longer felt like paperwork. It felt like a railing. Something solid enough to hold. "You acknowledged that I stopped representing Bennett House in September. Months later, you signed a document saying there had been no material change to key risk personnel. Then, after I got hurt, you told investigators I had no operational role and had shown up on my own." Dad raised his hand. "Those are completely different contexts." "Exactly." The room went still. 3 contexts, I said. 3 versions of my role. Mom leaned back. "You were involved when it suited you too." That one landed. Because it was not entirely false. For years, involvement had suited me emotionally. Being needed had felt like access, like belonging, like a chair that disappeared whenever there was nothing left for me to fix. The difference was that I had finally written down when it ended. "September 1st, I said. Mom rubbed her forehead. "We know the date." "Good. Then, why are we still arguing about it?" "We're not." For the first time since the call began, my voice felt completely steady. "I'm establishing whether the proposal fixes what happened or asks me to make it easier to survive." Megan spoke up. "What does that mean?" "It means if I come back now, the lender gets a current Claire Bennett. The gap becomes less important." Mom's eyes sharpened. "That is not why we're offering you a job." "Then why 90 days?" No one answered immediately. Dad finally said, "Because we can replace you after closing." There it was. Not cruelty. Not confession. Just practicality, so naked it almost relieved me. For years, the worst things in our house had rarely sounded hateful. They sounded reasonable. Megan leaned toward her screen. "Claire, we're not asking you to lie." "I know. That was what made the decision hard. Nobody needed me to forge a document. Nobody needed me to deny the September email. They needed something subtler. They needed me to come back now and make their assumptions useful again." "You'd actually have authority this time," Megan said. You could review everything. You could make them fix whatever needs fixing. Mom's jaw tightened at the phrase, make them, but she did not interrupt. Megan continued. You wanted them to take your work seriously. They're doing that. A year ago, that sentence might have broken me open. Now it only made the timing impossible to ignore. They're taking it seriously because the lender does. Megan flinched. Dad pushed back from the desk. This isn't productive. It's the most productive conversation we've had about my role in years. Then what do you want? Mom asked. There was genuine frustration in the question. Maybe even bewilderment. Once, the answer would have been easy. Recognition, respect, an apology. A place in the business equal to the responsibility I carried. But wanting those things from them had kept me negotiating against myself. I want the record to be accurate. Mom stared at me. That's it? Yes. She gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're willing to jeopardize this purchase over wording? No. The distinction mattered enough that I leaned closer to the screen. You made the purchase depend on wording that wasn't accurate. I'm deciding whether to keep participating in that. The call ended 20 minutes later without an agreement. Mom wanted my answer by noon the following day. Dad reminded me twice that the seller had another interested buyer. Megan said almost nothing after that. When the screens went dark, the proposal remained open in front of me. 90 days. A generous fee. A real title. Authority. The exact package I had once believed would prove they finally saw my value. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Then the phone rang. Alicia. Is this still a good time? She asked. Yes. I want to be careful about what I'm asking from you. That makes two of us. Her tone stayed even. The lender is not asking you to validate past statements. What we need to know is whether you currently have a role, and if not, whether the proposed structure changes that going forward. So if I return, you reassess based on the new arrangement. Correct. And if I don't? The financing would need to be reassessed without you, as a key risk resource. Does that automatically kill it? No. That answer mattered. Nobody was handing me a button labeled Destroy Bennett House 2. There were still numbers I did not control. Underwriting. Timing. The seller. Other conditions. My choice mattered without becoming magic. What do you need from me right now? I asked. An accurate statement of your current relationship. If you accept a new role, the effective date and scope. If you don't, confirmation that you remain unaffiliated. That's all? That's all from you. After the call, I opened the folder I had started in the hospital. No dramatic evidence wall. No red string. Just files. The September email. Mom's reply. The insurance packet submitted months later. The relevant section of the lender certification. My own text invitation from the day of the fall. A note from my conversation with Lena, clearly marked as my recollection rather than a document. Each original remained untouched. Copies went into a second folder. Then I created a single-page chronology. No accusation. No words like fraud. No claim about anyone's motives. Only dates, source, statement, contradiction. At the bottom, one sentence. My advisory relationship with Bennett House ended September 1st and has not resumed. The sentence looked almost offensively small, compared with everything hanging from it. Before sending anything, I read it aloud. Nothing in it required anyone to believe I was a good daughter. Nothing required Mom to admit she had used me. Nothing required Dad to care why the hospital mattered more to me than a closing date. That was new. Truth without permission. The correction went first to Alicia. A separate message went to Sarah at the insurer. Please update your records to reflect that I have not reviewed, approved, overseen, or represented Bennett House operations since September 1st. Any materials identifying me as a current advisor after that date are inaccurate as to my role. Send. Then I waited. The world did not end. No thunder. No immediate call from a lawyer. Just the hum of my laptop and sunlight moving across the kitchen floor. At 11:40 the next morning, Mom emailed. We need your answer before noon. The proposal was still unsigned. At 11:52, Megan called. This time, I answered. Have you decided? Yes. Her breath caught. Are you coming back? No. Nothing came through the line for several seconds. Then she whispered, "Claire, I'm not returning. You don't have to stay forever. I know. It's 3 months. I know. You could review everything yourself. You could make it safe. Isn't that what you want?" There it was again. The trap shaped exactly like my best qualities. Competence, responsibility, care. If I went back, the repairs would probably improve. The documentation would improve. Staff would get clearer procedures. The lender might become comfortable. Megan might get her second venue. Mom and Dad would call me indispensable. And the lesson would remain untouched. Push Claire far enough. Wait until the consequences are real. Then offer her just enough respect to make rescue feel like justice. "No," I said again. Megan's voice hardened. "If this deal dies, you know what everyone is going to say. Yes, that you did this." That sentence took me straight back to the service hallway. She did this to herself. Same structure. Different target. If the staircase hurt me, I had done it. If the financing failed after I corrected the record, I had done that too. Anything could become my fault as long as nobody had to examine the decision that came before it. "I'm not stopping the lender from financing you," I said. "I'm not asking the seller to walk away. I'm not telling anyone not to work with Bennett House." "Then help us. My name is not help you automatically own." "God, Claire." Her voice cracked. "You know what this means to me." "Yes." "Then how can you do this?" The answer hurt, because it was simple. "I can have the ability to save something and still not be responsible for saving it." She hung up. At 12:15, Alicia sent confirmation that the lender had received my correction and would reassess. By late afternoon, Dad called. I answered, because some consequences deserved to be heard directly. His first words were not hello. The lender suspended the file. "I know they were reassessing. The seller won't hold the property indefinitely." "I know. You understand what you just cost us?" My eyes closed. I corrected what you told them about me. Same difference. There was no anger in me when he said it. Just clarity. To Dad, a fact was neutral only if it did not cost him anything. "If the financing can stand without me, it will," I said. "And if it can't? Then it shouldn't have been presented as though I was part of it." His breathing roughened. "Your mother offered you everything you said you wanted. After using my name without asking. We were trying to fix it. You were trying to close." He did not deny that. The call ended with him saying he needed to deal with the mess. For once, I let him. 2 days later, Megan appeared at my apartment. No orchid this time. No soup. She stood outside with her arms folded tightly across her chest. The seller took the backup offer. The news struck harder than I expected. So that was it. Bennett House 2. The brick property beneath the live oaks. The bridal suites Megan had already sketched. The expansion Dad had talked about like the next chapter of the business. Gone. A small, ugly part of me expected satisfaction. None came. Only wait. Megan walked past me when I opened the door. "You could have saved it." There was no point pretending otherwise. "Yes." She turned. That answer seemed to hurt her more than denial would have. "You admit it?" "I could have gone back for 3 months. Then you chose this." "I chose not to be the condition your future depended on." Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard and looked away. "You think none of that was mine?" "I didn't say that. Mom built the paperwork, Dad handled the money, you built the systems. So what exactly did I do?" The question sounded furious. Underneath it was something I had not heard from Megan before. Fear without a parent rushing in to translate it. "Your designs were yours," I said. "Your client relationships were yours. The work you actually did was yours. And the rest? My name wasn't." She looked down at the floor. For once, I did not step forward. Did not touch her arm. Did not tell her everything would be okay. Comfort had too often become another way I prevented people from sitting with what they had chosen. Megan left after 10 minutes. At the door, she said, "Mom says you wanted this." "No. She says you've been waiting for a chance to prove we need you." A laugh nearly came out. Instead, I shook my head. "If I wanted to prove you needed me, I would have taken the job." That stopped her. Then she left. The next consequence arrived in writing. Dad emailed me a copy of a formal notice Bennett House had sent to its insurer and lender contacts. An independent risk consultant had been retained. All material insurance and financing representations would require dual review. Administrative authority over those communications was being transferred away from Mom. Dad did not frame it as punishment. The email said only, "This is necessary to preserve current operations and restore confidence in our reporting process." Practical. Exactly his language. He had not chosen me over Mom. He had chosen the surviving venue over the person who had controlled its paperwork. For once, that was enough. Mom's final email came that evening. No greeting. No signature. "You wanted to be treated like you weren't family. Congratulations." My fingers went automatically to reply. A dozen answers formed. "You left me on a floor. You used my name. You only offered respect when you needed financing. You taught Megan that my boundaries were obstacles." Every sentence was true. None of them would give me anything I did not already have. The cursor blinked in an empty response box. For most of my life, Mom could pull me back into position with one accusation: ungrateful, difficult, disloyal, too sensitive, not acting like a daughter. This one was simply a newer version. My hand moved to the menu. Not reply. Archive. The message disappeared from my inbox. Nothing about that click felt dramatic. No victory music. No rush of triumph. Just an unfamiliar quiet. For once, there was a problem at Bennett House. Everyone knew I could fix part of it, and I had chosen not to. The venue was still standing. So was I. Detective Cole called 3 days after I archived Mom's email. For half a second, seeing her name on my screen brought the service hallway back so sharply that my fingers tightened around the coffee mug. Yellow tape. Music behind the ballroom doors. Dad checking his watch. Then my apartment came back into focus. Morning light across the counter. My own front door locked behind me. No one waiting for me to fix anything. "Claire Bennett," I answered. "Miss Bennett, this is Mara Cole. Is now a good time?" "Yes. I wanted to update you before this gets filtered through somebody else." That choice of words made me sit down. She did not tell me my parents had suddenly confessed. Nothing so convenient happened. Instead, she walked me through what had been established. Mom's text proved I had been asked to come to Bennett House. Lena's statement confirmed she found me in the service corridor and made the emergency call herself. The timestamps narrowed the period between my fall and that call. My parents' original description of me arriving unexpectedly no longer matched the evidence. Neither did the suggestion that I had simply wandered into a restricted area without invitation. "What happens now?" I asked. "There are still questions being reviewed about the delay in getting help and the statements given afterward. I can't promise you an outcome." "I'm not asking for one." The answer surprised me. A week earlier, some part of me would have wanted a verdict severe enough to prove I had not imagined the betrayal. Now the facts already did that. Cole continued. "If we need anything further, we'll contact you. Your statement is complete as of today." My hand rested on the folder beside me. For days, I had kept it within reach like a shield. Text message, hospital records, my own chronology. The incident had seemed enormous when I woke up because my parents already had a version of it waiting for me. Now their version no longer stood alone. "Then I don't have anything else to add," I said. Cole paused. "All right. Detective?" "Yes. Thank you for telling me what you could tell me without pretending you knew more than you did." Her voice softened slightly. "That's the job." After the call ended, I closed the folder. Not archived. Not destroyed. Just closed. The detectives knocking on my parents' door had once felt like the promise of the whole story. It wasn't. They could establish where I had been, who called for help, and whether the first statements matched the evidence. They could not decide who I would become after that. That part was mine. The consequences at Bennett House arrived more slowly. Lena called one Thursday afternoon. Before answering, I checked myself for the old reflex. Was there a problem? Did someone need a form? Had the new consultant missed something? Then I reminded myself that a phone call did not create an obligation. "Hey," I said. "You busy?" "A little. What's up?" "The rail is done." My grip loosened around the phone. "Replaced?" "Mounting hardware, rail, the whole section." They closed the back corridor for 2 days. Something in me went unexpectedly still. For years, I had believed that if I did not push, remind, follow up, and make myself unpleasant enough to be useful, nothing would happen. Yet the repair had happened without me. The consultant made them do a full maintenance review, Lena continued. Not just that staircase. Good. Staff training starts Monday. Also good. She hesitated. The insurance premium changed. That sounds like something I shouldn't know unless you're allowed to tell me. A short laugh came through the line. Fair. Let's just say your father has discovered that independent professionals charge money. That one made me smile. For years, Dad had treated every hour I gave Bennett House like a renewable natural resource. A favor. A daughter helping. Something too informal to deserve an invoice. Now the venue had a consultant with a contract, defined authority, scheduled reviews, and actual fees. Exactly what I had asked for. Just not for me. Oddly, that no longer hurt. What about the staff? I asked. We're still here. Relief moved through me before I could stop it. The result I had feared most had not happened. Bennett House had not collapsed. Servers had not lost their jobs because I corrected a record. Couples had not been abandoned. There had been disruption. One catering agreement had been lost. Insurance conditions changed. Repairs cost money. The second property was gone. But the original venue kept operating. The world my parents had told me only I could save had survived my refusal. Before hanging up, Lena said, Deborah doesn't handle the insurance calls anymore. I waited. Your dad and the consultant do them together now, she added. Anything significant needs 2 people reviewing it. There was no triumph in her voice. I felt none either. Just a strange sense of proportion returning. Mom had not been destroyed. She had lost unilateral control over the very channels she had used to make an outdated version of me look current. That was enough. 2 weeks later, she asked to meet. The message came by email, exactly as I had required. 30 minutes. Public place. No business discussion if that's what you insist on. The last 6 words almost made me decline. Instead, I replied with the name of a cafe near my office and a time. 30 minutes. No Bennett House. My terms. She arrived 8 minutes early. Of course she did. Mom had always believed punctuality was evidence of moral seriousness. She wore a cream blouse and the gold earrings Dad had given her for their 30th anniversary. Her hair was neat, makeup understated. Anyone walking past our table would have seen a composed woman meeting her adult daughter for coffee. No one would have known she had once looked down at me on a floor and called an emergency, a consequence of my disobedience. Your head looks better, she said. Thanks. Any headaches? Sometimes. She nodded. For a few moments we occupied the kind of conversation strangers could have had. Weather, traffic, my coffee. Then Mom placed both hands around her cup. Everything I did was to keep that business afloat. There it was. Not an apology. An argument. I know that's how you see it. Her expression tightened. That sounds very therapeutic. It's just accurate. We had employees depending on us. Couples who had paid deposits. Your father had borrowed against the property. Megan had spent years building a brand. And sometimes you make decisions for more than yourself. The old guilt moved almost automatically. Not enough to control me. Enough to remind me it had once lived here comfortably. You're right, I said. Mom blinked. You do make decisions for more than yourself. That's why accurate paperwork matters. I'm not here to argue about paperwork. You asked to meet. I asked to meet because I'm tired of hearing what a monster you think I am. I've never called you a monster. You didn't have to. She glanced toward the window. You made sure everyone sees me as the one who used you. Nobody had needed my help with that. Still, I kept my voice level. I corrected documents that used my name. You knew what that would do. Yes. Mom looked back at me sharply, perhaps expecting shame. This time I did not offer it. You could have saved the expansion. Yes. So Megan was right. About that part. Her lips parted. For most of my life, the argument would have turned there. I would have rushed to explain that I had not meant to hurt anyone. She would have used my explanation as evidence that I agreed harm was my responsibility. So I left the truth standing by itself. Mom leaned closer. You sound proud of that. No. Then, what do you sound like? Done pretending that being capable of preventing consequences makes me responsible for preventing all of them. The cafe noise seemed louder for a few seconds. A spoon touched ceramic somewhere behind me. Someone laughed near the door. Mom's fingers tightened around her cup. I suppose your new friends tell you that sounds healthy. No one told me to say it. That mattered enough to correct. She sighed. Your father barely speaks about you. I know. Megan lost the project she built her whole future around. I know. And I lost control of half the work I've done for years. That sentence caught my attention. Not because she admitted wrongdoing, because she had finally named the consequence plainly. Control. I didn't ask Dad to remove you from anything. You knew he would have to. No. I knew the records needed correction. What he did afterward was his decision. Mom gave a thin smile. You've gotten very good at separating yourself from outcomes. No. My cup had gone untouched. I'm getting better at separating my choices from everyone else's. The distinction landed between us. She looked away first. When the 30 minutes were nearly over, I pulled one folded page from my bag. Not evidence. Not a demand. My boundary. I want this clear so we don't keep having the same conversation. Mom stared at the paper. You brought rules? Yes. Her mouth hardened. I did not slide the page toward her until I finished speaking. No business calls. No requests for free review. No use of my title, photograph, name, or work in new materials without permission. If we have personal contact, it stays personal. So I need permission to mention my own daughter now. To use my professional identity to support Bennett House? Yes. She sat back. Unbelievable. Then don't mention me. Mom looked at the page again but did not pick it up. What am I supposed to tell people when they ask why you're not involved anymore? That question would once have terrified me. The idea that Mom might tell relatives, vendors, or old family friends that I was selfish had kept me in rooms long after I wanted to leave them. Now it sounded almost small. Tell them whatever you want. She frowned. Excuse me. Tell them whatever story helps you sleep. A pause. Just don't use my name to make it true. Her eyes stayed on me for several seconds. Then she stood. The paper remained on the table. I don't recognize you anymore. My hand curled once around the coffee cup. There it was. The final threat underneath so many of our arguments. Change. And you become a stranger. For once, it did not frighten me. I think that's part of the point. She left without saying goodbye. The folded boundary sheet stayed where I had placed it. I took it home. Mom did not need to carry the paper for the boundary to exist. I did. The next month passed quietly enough that I kept waiting for something to rupture. Nothing did. Dad sent one short message on my birthday. Hope you're doing well. No request. No guilt. I replied. Thank you. Nothing more. Then Megan emailed. The subject line was simply, I fixed something. Attached was a screenshot from the Bennett House website. The current risk page had changed. My name was gone from the operational section. Farther down, beneath a history of the venue's early development, one sentence remained. Original risk and incident procedures were developed with assistance from Claire Bennett, who has not been affiliated with Bennett House operations since September. Past tense. Specific. True. A second attachment showed the expansion deck had been removed from their shared promotional archive. Below the screenshots, Megan had written, I knew your name was in the presentation. I told myself Mom had permission because that was easier than asking you. After you showed me what was wrong, I still asked you to wait until closing because I wanted the property more than I wanted to admit what the paperwork meant. That part was my choice. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to come back. I read the message twice. No mention of Mom needing help. No demand that I forgive her. No reminder that sisters should move on. For the first time, Megan had separated explanation from responsibility. My reply took nearly an hour. Not because I was angry, because I did not want gratitude for one accountable message to become automatic access. Finally, thank you for correcting it. I'm willing to have coffee sometime. I'm not ready to be involved with Bennett House, and that isn't changing. Her answer came a few minutes later. Okay. Coffee is enough. We met the following Saturday. Nothing magical happened. Megan did not transform into a different person over one latte. She talked about losing the second property. I listened. She told me she had started sitting in on operations meetings instead of only creative meetings. I almost joked that she had finally discovered spreadsheets. I decided not to. When she complained about the independent consultant being rigid, I raised an eyebrow. Megan caught herself. Yeah, I heard it too. That made me laugh. For the first time in months, laughing around my sister did not feel like surrender. Still, when she asked whether she could send me a revised vendor checklist just for curiosity, the answer came easily. No. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Right. Coffee was enough. A few weeks later, Dana stopped beside my desk at work. You remember the regional compliance lead assignment you turned down last spring? My hands paused above the keyboard. Unfortunately, you said weekends were complicated. They had been. Not because my actual job required them. Because Bennett House always might. A rehearsal issue. A vendor question. An insurance email Mom suddenly needed translated into plain English. Nothing scheduled. Everything expected. Dana set a folder on my desk. The position reopened. That's fast. The person who took it relocated. She tapped the folder. If you want to be considered, tell me by Friday. No rescue. No guaranteed promotion. An opportunity. One I had already been qualified for before any of this happened. That evening, the application sat open on my laptop. My calendar occupied the second screen. Years of habits were visible in the empty blocks. Keep Saturday loose. Don't schedule Sunday afternoon. Mom may need help before wedding season. Megan may ask about a client contract. Dad may need someone to read a notice. I selected the next Saturday, typed one word, unavailable, then submitted the application. Months later, after I had taken the role and stopped expecting my phone to ring every time I made plans, a friend from work invited me to her wedding. The venue was outside Charleston, not Bennett House. That helped. Still, the moment I stepped into the reception space, my body remembered more than I wanted it to. White linens, tall candles, staff moving quickly along the walls. A service door tucked behind the bar. For a second, my attention started cataloging everything automatically. Exit. Extension cord. Unattended tray. A server carrying too much glassware at once. Then my friend touched my arm. Claire, you made it. She hugged me. No question afterward. No, while you're here. No, could you take a quick look? Just happiness that I had come. I sat at a table with people who knew me from work and still somehow managed not to turn dinner into a compliance meeting. Halfway through the reception, the coordinator stepped toward the microphone. Could everyone responsible for tonight's event please head toward the ballroom entrance for a quick check? My chair moved before my brain caught up. Barely an inch. The old reflex. Stand. Help. Someone needs something. Then I stopped. Nobody at that wedding expected me to move. No lanyard hung around my neck. No folder waited in my lap. No mother stood near a doorway watching to see whether I would solve the next problem. I settled back into the chair. Dana, seated beside me, glanced over. You okay? Across the room, the bride was laughing with her father. A waiter refilled my water and moved on without asking me a question. My phone buzzed once inside my purse. The family group chat. Nothing urgent. For once, I did not even check who had written. Yeah, I told Dana. The answer came without effort. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The music changed. People stood as the newlyweds entered the room. I rose with everyone else, lifted my glass, and watched two people walk into a celebration that required nothing from me except my presence. For most of my life, love had come with a job description. That night, nobody needed me to fix anything, and I stayed anyway.